Greetings. It's Wednesday, April 1st, 2020, and we're going to have a Bible study today talking about how do you pick sides. We're in a time of debate about how to handle the coronavirus, about social separation, and who's right, which party is the best for leading, and we are in a country that's divided politically, and there are a lot of divisions going on, and we need to talk about how do you pick sides, and we need to do it from God's standpoint, from the standpoint of how Jesus lived and the examples that he gave. Not only is there a political challenge, but with the isolation, the families having to stay together, there's some conflict going on in some of the families. Things that are coming out and things are coming up again from conversations and disagreements from the past. They can come up and be ignited back into a fresh controversy, and somebody might be drawn in as a peacemaker. And how do you choose sides in that? Well, like I said, I want to see how Jesus handled the conflict and how he would choose a side. And I want to start looking in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 22. And as I mentioned before, this is a time of coming chaos, and the conflict is about to get very intense. And Jesus is with his disciples, one of whom, Judas, is about to betray him. He's already gotten 30 pieces of silver to hand Jesus over. And another disciple, Peter, is about to deny him in just a few hours under intense stress and strain. And Jesus knows all this. And in the middle of this discussion, in chapter 22 of Luke, in verse 31, Jesus announces, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. Satan asking to sift during the time of testing. And maybe you're already experiencing that. Maybe you're already experiencing the sifting, the testing, the challenges, the doubt, the fear, the anger. All those things are starting to come out. All the things that maybe you've pushed down in your life and in your heart, and they're coming out. Whether it's with God or with other people, all this time alone, maybe you stirred up your thinking. And maybe you feel like you were being sifted. So Satan, what is Satan doing? Well, if we look at this, what little we know about him, there's quite a bit, but he's not the main character of the Bible by far. We see that Satan is an accuser. If we look in Revelation in chapter 12, it talks about this conflict between a big red dragon and a woman having a child, and the child really is Jesus. And it says, the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth and his angels with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ. For the accuser of our brothers, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been hurled down. The accuser. And that's what we see, Satan wanting to sift Peter like wheat. Just like back in Job, chapters 1 and 2, Satan has gone over the earth, roaming to and fro. And God says, have you seen Job? Satan, yeah, I've seen Job, but just you're protecting him. So again, this accuser, he's stirring, he's instigating, he's trying to bring the downfall of God's people. And Jesus, well, he knew Peter. He knew Peter. The Peter who had enough faith to get out of the boat on the sea and walk towards Jesus, but not enough faith to make it to Jesus without falling down and sinking in and having to cry out, Lord, save me. This is Peter who had enough faith when asked, who do you say that I am? You are the Christ, the Son of God. And that strong faith was there, but right away, there wasn't enough faith to trust Jesus to know what was going to happen. Jesus said, I'm going to die. Peter says, no, you're not. So there's enough faith to get him started, but not enough faith to finish. And that very night, Peter had enough faith to want to follow when Jesus was taken away. But when tested, sifted, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. 3 times. After all the boasting, all the bragging. So when Satan comes and asks to sift Peter like wheat, and the rest of the disciples too, Jesus says, I have prayed for you, that your faith may not fail, and when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. Because Jesus knows about Peter. He knows his failures. He knows his weakness. He knows his almost getting there and then failing, sinking in the water, not trusting Jesus to know what's going to happen. But how do you pick sides? Satan, you got some points. Satan the accuser, you got some points about Peter. Maybe he needs sifting. But Jesus never took Satan's side when dealing with sinners. He never stood with Satan. And I want us to look at a couple of pictures, a couple of things in the Gospel of Luke to help strengthen this, because this is what we need to think about. In our time, maybe you're being tested and sifted like wheat, and Jesus is praying for you. Jesus has your back. The Spirit is interceding with groans that we can't express to the Father. We have an advocate of the Spirit with God, and we have the advocate with Jesus, as we see here with God. And so we know he's working for us, even though Jesus knows us. And he doesn't take Satan's side, but our side, to invite us to survive. He prayed that Peter would hold on to his faith, even though he was going to fall. And when he turns back, to strengthen his brothers, that God's not finished with Peter's story, just as he's not finished with yours. But I want us to talk about our relationships with other people, whether it's family members or neighbors or people who disagree with us. Never take Satan's side. Never hold all those little things that you know about them and use that against them. That's Satan the accuser, the deceiver's task. That's what he does. But we're called to be different followers of Jesus. So let's look at a couple of examples here in the Gospel of Luke. One I'd like to look at is back in Luke chapter 15, the story that we call a prodigal son. I like the title of it in my German Children Bible, The Story of the Merciful Father. Because it's a story, it talks about 2 brothers. They're with their dad, and the younger one says, Dad, give me my inheritance. I want to go off on my own. So the father gave it to him. So the son takes the inheritance off to some far off place and spends it all. Doesn't have anything to show for it. He's down and out and having to take a job feeding pigs. Now, for a Jewish person, the pigs are unclean animals, and so that's really a low job. And in fact, this son was so hungry, he wanted to eat the pig food because he was starving. And he was thinking to himself, finally, he'd hit the bottom, that I can go home and tell my father, I've sinned against heaven and sinned against you. Just let me be a servant, because your servants can eat better than this. So that's what he did. He came home. And the father saw his son from a distance and ran to greet him and embraced him. He gave him a robe. He gave him a ring. He gave him a big party. And he's celebrating his son coming home, because no matter what the son had done, the father still loves the son. And the father represents God with us. And then we learn about this brother, the older brother, the one who stayed, the one who worked, the loyal, faithful son, the good son. He became angry, and he would not go into this party. In Luke 15 and verse 28, the older brother became angry, refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered, Father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. Yet this son of yours, who squandered your money with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fatted calf for him. The accuser is there in the voice of the older brother. You know what he's done. You know how wasteful he's done, and compared to me, I'm a good son. I'm the one that's doing everything right. And look at this. But the father doesn't take the side of the accuser, the Satan. This voice of saying, you know everything that's wrong. He takes the side of love and mercy and forgiveness and getting a fresh start. The father said, son, you're always with me and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because of this brother of yours. He was dead, but he's alive again. He was lost and is found. Now, Jesus is telling this story to help us see how to deal with the conflict. And so that we don't take Satan's side in an argument with a family member, even though they've done some horrible things. Whose side are you going to take when you talk to them, when you talk about them? Whose side are you going to take when you pray for them? You are praying for them, I'm assuming. Are you taking Satan's side or the side of the living Father or the side of Jesus that still wants to fix things and put things back together? Turn another page. We see Luke chapter 19. We meet a guy named Zacchaeus. And now the Gospels are full of stories like this. Jesus is coming into the town of Jericho. He's on his way to Jerusalem for the Passover and ultimately to die. And there's crowds all around him, and we see in chapter 18 as he comes into town, there's a blind man off at a distance yelling, Son of David, have mercy on me. And everybody said, be quiet. Don't bother Jesus. As the crowds are all around Jesus, that's kind of ironic that they're worried about Jesus being bothered when he's just bombarded with all these people coming to him. But that guy really bothered him. But Jesus called him and healed him. So there's all these people coming into town, and there's a guy there named Zacchaeus. And Zacchaeus is very rich. He's a rich man, it says. He's a tax collector. Nobody likes tax collectors, even then. And he worked for the Roman government, and the Jews didn't like that. There are lots of reasons to put him aside, even though he was rich. And so he's looking for Jesus, and he climbs a tree because he's a short man. He can't see over the crowd, and he sees Jesus. And Jesus looks in the tree, and he stops. He says, I'm going to your house today. Come on down. Now, Jesus, didn't you realize that there were lots of people that would love to host you at their house and have a meal for you and share an afternoon with you? Didn't you know that all these people are already there? Why Zacchaeus? Why this guy? In fact, there were some of the people who said, he's gone to be the guest of a sinner. He's going to his house. Look at that. Not only is Zacchaeus not the best choice out of all of us, but he's kind of the worst choice. Jesus, what are you thinking? But Jesus did not take the side of Satan. He took the side of love in dealing with this person he was just meeting. And all the people were telling Jesus, that's a sinner. You don't want to hang out with him. You don't want to go there. But Jesus didn't take Satan's side. Jesus took the side of love to offer forgiveness, to offer a door to come through into a new life. And we need to be careful with the people that we meet, no matter what we hear or know about them, that we don't take Satan's side against them, just as the brother followed Satan's side and the father showed mercy. In Zacchaeus, Jesus said, today salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost. Because you see, Zacchaeus was ready. He was ready to go through the door of forgiveness. He said, look, I give half my possessions to the poor. If I've cheated anybody out of anything, I'll pay back 4 times the amount. I want to make things right. I want to share. I want to love. Look, I want to be like Jesus. when we carry the accusations of Satan against people that we meet or people that we know about, we miss the opportunity to see a changed life, a life changed by the grace of God and the love of Christ and the forgiveness, the life of newness. Whose side have you been taken? In all of the discussions that you've had, whether political or personal, whether about people in the community or people in your own family or people in the church, whose side have you been taken? Jesus refused to take Satan's side. Turn another couple pages. We look at Luke chapter 23, and Jesus at this time is hanging on the cross after being beaten and spit on and lied about. Hearing the crowds, the people he came to serve and save, some of whom have heard him teach in the temple court, shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." And the Roman soldiers who have been so cruel to him. In Luke 23 and verse 34, Jesus says, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." Now the accuser, Satan, he could be right there saying, "Look at that guy. You know him. You know what kind of life he lives, and now he is making fun of you. Look at that Pharisee right there. You know his sin, his greed, his lust. You know everything going on with him. And look at him. He's making fun of you. Get down off the cross and show him what's up." Satan could have been right there in Jesus' ear, but Jesus did not take Satan's side, even though all those people were wrong and sinful and harmful and godless. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." Jesus never took the side of Satan in a disagreement. And so we need to be careful in this time, because we can be isolated and alone and frustrated and take that out on people around us. That means we're taking Satan's side. Let's be the people that draw near to God, like Wade said in his lesson. Don't social distance yourself from God, but be on God's side and draw near to God so that we can take Jesus' side and not Satan's, and provide a door for forgiveness and healing and reconciliation, whether it's with your spouse or your kids or your neighbors or whomever it might be. Take Jesus' side of forgiveness and reconciliation and not Satan's side of condemnation and accusation and remembering the list of all the wrongs. Let's be the people who forgive so we can be the people who help bring Christ's healing to this world.